IUI stands for intrauterine insemination. It is also known as artificial insemination. It is the fertility procedure that is the most closely related to getting pregnant naturally. Step 1, stimulation and monitoring. If you're doing a medicated cycle, you're going to take an injectable hormone that just helps make sure your follicles develop nice, healthy eggs. You're going to do that for about a week or two. The second step is monitoring. They're going to monitor you in two ways, with blood work to keep track of your hormone levels and with ultrasound to keep track of how many follicles are growing and developing. They really only want one, maybe two, because they are not controlling how many eggs are fertilized, so they don't want to risk multiples. When my very first IUI, I had 4 follicles developing and they were not comfortable with that, and we ended up canceling the cycle. I know someone else who had 4 follicles developing. Their clinic, we were technically using the same clinic but different doctors. They were not comfortable with that and canceled the cycle. They went home and tried at home and ended up with quadruplets. So it is a real concern, and I'm glad I didn't end up with quadruplets. So the way that they know that you're ready for insemination is one of two things happens. Either there is a surge in your hormone levels, which is going to be detected in the blood work, or your follicle or follicles reach a certain size. So when either one of those two things happen, you will do what's called a trigger shot. Now, my trigger shots for my IUIs were still done with the tiny diabetic needles in my abdomen. And then a certain number of hours after the trigger shot is when you come in for the insemination. So step 2 is washing and preparing the sperm. If you are using your partner, they will go in that same day, give their sample, and it will be washed and prepared. If you are using a frozen sample or a sperm donor that has been frozen, they're going to thaw it that morning and wash it and prepare it. All right, you're ready for insemination. They insert the sperm using a catheter. It's very quick. There might be some mild cramping just because they're inserting things, but you're done pretty quickly, and then it's all up to the sperm to find the eggs and fertilize them. All right, step 4, waiting. By far the hardest part for me, because there's nothing to do. There's no more doctor's appointments, there's no hormones, there's no blood work, there's no nothing. You're just waiting. The fertility clinic is going to encourage you to not do an at-home pregnancy test and wait until they have scheduled the blood test. And that's just because they know the best timing when they're going to get the most accurate result. And, I've done it both ways. I've tested early and I've waited. And, luckily, all the times that I've tested early, actually, I think I've only tested early twice out of the seven different fertility procedures I've done. I think I have only tested early twice. And luckily, both times I was pregnant. I always told myself that I didn't want to test early because if it was negative, I knew I wasn't going to believe it. I knew that I was going to say to myself, well, it's probably just too early. My hormone levels are still too low. I'm not going to believe it. The times that I did test early and I was pregnant, I still didn't quite believe it. I tested a few times before my HCG test, and luckily everything was fine and the lines got darker, and then my HCG test was positive. But that whole waiting period is just mind games. And so it's really up to you and how much you can handle whether you test early or not. My biggest piece of advice for that waiting period, whether or not you decide to test early, is to find things to distract yourself. Take a vacation, take a class, start a project, anything that can keep your mind busy, keep your hands busy, give you something to do and to focus on. It's really important to remember that everybody's diagnosis is going to be a little bit different, so everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. And different fertility clinics are going to have slightly different protocols. So don't compare your experiences to mine. I'm trying to keep my advice pretty general because, number one, it's really outdated, and because your fertility clinic is probably going to do things slightly differently. So just be careful about comparing your experience to mine. To mine, I don't know what that is, or to anyone else's. Please remember to like, subscribe, and let me know what other videos you'd like me to make.